Well, I completely agree with what Elon Musk says about the need to become a multiplanetary species, possibly in the future also an interstellar species, which means living in other solar systems. Also because this solar system is not really favorable much to human life. There are no other Earth-like planets here. The closest one could be Mars and Titan, perhaps, which is a moon of Saturn. However, similar is intended as a huge approximation, of course, given that Mars has an absolutely rarefied atmosphere, does not have a magnetic field, and therefore it is exposed to massive solar radiations, and then it's extremely cold. And Titan instead, despite it has an atmosphere even thicker than Earth's, and also has lakes, has an average temperature that is minus 180 degrees, I guess, and the reason why the lakes are liquid it is because they're not made of water, but they're made of methane. But all of these astronomical details aside, I think the purpose of life, the meaning of life is progress in itself. But wait a second, of course, when we mention this word progress, I know that people immediately jump into their conclusions. So what I mean by progress does not refer to technological progress. I'm not even referring to progress in the sense of knowledge. I understand progress as the understanding of ourselves. What does it mean? Progress in the sense of understanding how the organization of our thoughts works, and therefore how all of this makes this thing we call neuroplasticity work, which then represents the wonders of the possibilities of the human brain. This is what I call progress, and in this area, what most people would call love, I think, is probably the most important thing in this progress. However, I don't really want to talk much about this aspect because I know that most people don't really care to fully understand what I mean by love. It is something a negligence that I've always noticed since I was a child. I've noticed how nobody really cares so much about understanding what love is not. No one cares to scan what is called love, but is not love. How do we define something using its opposite, but without understanding what its opposite is? For instance, will there be love if there was no attention? What about seeing love in the sense of caring, being sensitive, accurate, attentive, as something really analogous to having a great deal of attention? Now, without going into too complex territories, understanding these dynamics is the progress I'm talking about. In the sense of the progress of our consciousness, without which I believe it is the catastrophic illusion, even to think that we could expand and evolve technologically without understanding these things, and therefore without activating this process that I mentioned. And therefore without even activating this progress that I mentioned. I do not see how it is possible to even assume that we are able to establish a colony of 1 million people on Mars, for instance, without understanding in advance what can be done to comprehend and refine the understanding of who we are. And it goes without saying that such an understanding should be achieved without inventing new belief systems or clinging to old ones, of course, or ideologies or methodologies, etc. I really don't see how this can happen. I don't see how we can get anywhere without that understanding in the long run. In the short term, well, that's okay. Of course, 10 years from now, we will probably have the cure for cancer, for instance. Computers will disappear, and we will have technologies of purely holographic nature. And we will probably also reach the point where many people or world leaders will have to organize and dialogue in order to decide what to do about the step we need to do, the step that needs to be taken to overcome the money mentality and thus completely change the economic system, basing it on another system and no longer on the financial one. This last thing is something that will have to happen. It will happen, I'm pretty sure, because it has to happen, really. That is moving beyond this unfortunate concept that we call earning a living or cost of living and these absurdities. However, all those things are not the progress I say I'm talking about. These things I have listed will almost certainly occur by the end of the century, probably even earlier. Yet this is not the progress I speak of. If this progress does not come into being, not to be pessimistic, but I believe that conceivably humanity will not have a future, either here on Earth or on other planets or in space, if we ever decide to go to and live in space stations. If, on the other hand, there will be a better understanding of how we function on a mental level, then this understanding will bear probably enormous, if not revolutionary, fruits in all aspects of progress, including evolution not in the biological sense, but in the sense of improvement in any sector of the human experience. I notice how Elon Musk, for instance, despite all his genius, as well as many others, do not really seem to understand this need, this progress I'm talking about. Very many people, even just hearing me talk about these things that I call progress, will be really inclined to think that I'm talking about some kind of spirituality, which is exactly not what I'm talking about. I don't know. I believe that an attempt should be made, at least starting from the education sector, at least to see what can be brought into being and whether we can accelerate certain things. If no attempt is made at all, I really don't see how we can improve our civilization in the coming decades. Because even if 1 million people will go live on Mars, they will bring with them the same conditioning and way of using the brain that we have always had on Earth. Fairly obvious, no? Which means there will be violence, neurosis, wars, conflicting attitudes, etc., etc., etc. Beliefs. And if all these problems are exported to colonies on other planets, then the exponentiality through which these problems will become catastrophic will be super fast, And this is a huge risk that will inevitably happen in case we do nothing to change our consciousness. In a nutshell, the consciousness we always had on Earth, with its pros and cons, of course, will be the same consciousness we will carry with us to other planets. That is fairly obvious. The problem is that the cons in other planets would be absolutely disastrous and catastrophic. And this will happen in a very short time. Simply put, human consciousness must change. If it doesn't happen, I really don't see how humanity can have a rosy future.